Lovisa. I'm a knitter based in London, and normally I do videos where I talk about my projects and updates and things like that. Today's gonna be a little bit different because I've recently come back from an amazing trip to Mongolia. This has been sort of top of my bucket list for the last 20 years. Can't believe I actually went and had an amazing time. Got to experience things I never thought I would get to experience. If you've somehow randomly ended up on this video as somebody looking for information about traveling to Mongolia, please, manage your expectations. I'm not a travel blogger. I don't normally film vlogs at all, let alone travel vlogs, and this was just kind of such a unique opportunity to capture the experience. But I was very, I did not travel to Mongolia to film a video. I was very much there to experience this trip that I'd wanted to experience for a very long time. So if you're, want to see my firsthand experience in Mongolia, stick around. I hope you enjoy. But if you are, looking for the top 5 places to visit in, your 3-day trip to Mongolia, this is not it. But I did vlog it. But I wanted to kind of come on here first, give a little bit of context. I did try to film a bit of context prior to traveling, which I do not recommend trying to create content the night before you fly. It was totally chaotic. It was all over the place. So we're gonna try this again. I also just kind of wanted to call out, if you're not really into watching other people's holidays, I get it. I totally understand. I will film a little bit of context here, then the vlog, and then I'll come back and kind of film what I got, which, sneak peek. And then I will talk a little bit about some of the sort of design inspiration that I got from the trip. I have a number of different ideas that have definitely come out of this. All of the yarn that I got was from a company called Ula+Lia. You might have come across them before. It's basically run by this guy, John, who has been running these Kickstarter campaigns for, I guess, 9 years now, where he works with local cooperatives to source all of the raw materials. So based on the pre-orders of the Kickstarter, he sources the raw materials and then he turns that into some production runs for yarn. And I got a chance to meet him, buy some yarn off him. I will talk through more of what I got and what I might do with them at the end of the video. But the Kickstarter for this year is live, which is why I want to call it out. I will link it below. If you have any questions, John is super friendly. Chat to him on Instagram. I will put timestamps below because I've edited the vlog part of this video and I know that it's at least an hour and a bit. So whatever I'm adding here is just gonna be a long video. So if you are here for it, then, get comfortable, get a project. I'm here to keep you company and give you some different inspiration, I guess. With that, I will jump in. So Mongolia. So the biggest question I got, so I've been planning, my husband planned this trip for my birthday. He organized the whole thing, involved me in a lot of it because it was sort of my dream to go there. Wanted to make sure we were doing the things that I wanted to do, but also obviously what he wanted to do as well. The biggest question that we got kind of in the lead up was oh, that's so cool, first reaction. And then the second reaction was why Mongolia? It's actually kind of a hard one for me to answer because it's been a dream for such a long time. Yeah, I would say it's about 20 years ago. I read a book, I'll put a picture of it on the screen. I don't even know if it's still in print. It was about Genghis Khan. It's literally the name of the book. I don't know why I picked up this book. I don't know why I read the book, but it sort of changed my perspective on history, I think. We all have those places where we've read a book or watched a movie or something has kind of caught our attention. And then over the years, it's always just been that place that I knew in order to do it right, it would require a certain level of planning and support because it's not really a place you just randomly show up at and go to. So there was a part of me that thought maybe I never get there. Maybe it's just one of those places that I always want to go to, but this was always going to require a little bit more guidance. That was the challenge. My husband definitely pulled this off. So there's a few different ways that you can travel to Mongolia. So I would say that most people traveled to Mongolia with groups and like group tours. We were on our own. We did like we had a guide in all the places we were. We had which acted as translator and guide, and then we had a driver because of some of the places we were going. You definitely had to have a driver. A taxi was not going to drive you like 45 minutes off road into the desert. We worked with the tour company to kind of make sure that we were doing the things that we wanted to do, and I definitely wanted to understand more about the history and the culture and the different ways of life, especially nomadic ways of life. I also did highlight that, you know, I have an interest in fiber arts and I wanted to see a cashmere goat, and I wanted to, you know, ideally comb a cashmere goat. We were there at the time when they were combing, and I wanted to, you know, see yaks and camels and all that stuff. I wanted to learn more about the cashmere industry in Mongolia, go to museums that highlighted the arts and craftsmanship and things like that. So that was, there was a bit of that sort of threaded through. It wasn't the only thing we were doing, but often people go to Mongolia for the horseback ridings. They have a massive culture around Mongolian horses. They're quite unique, but a lot of people do kind of horseback treks. And then a lot of people do cycling or backpacking or hiking or more kind of outdoorsy stuff. And then they're kind of like less targeted to Western tourists, but more targeted to like Chinese or Korean tourists. They have kind of large mass tourism camps and buses and that kind of thing. So there isn't a lot of just kind of casual tourism. It's not, unless you speak Mongolian, it's not super easy to get around. It's not impossible. There are ways to do it. I'm sure there are ways to do it. And especially if you're kind of like just happy with backpacking and camping and things like that. I'm not really the backpacking kind of girl. Not really a camper. So we did the luxury version. And I think that's worth just calling out that like we were very lucky to be able to do this. It's not the most authentic on every level. Like our gear was very luxury. We had the nice car that, you know, didn't bounce as much. And yeah, we had our own bathroom. That was, that was a real big win. It should also go without kind of saying that I obviously asked everybody before we filmed if they were happy to be filmed. I tried to be as respectful and considerate as I could be on that front. One of the things I say at some point in the video is I was a little bit concerned about tourism theater and that some of these activities could feel contrived, and doing it, I didn't feel that way. I think it sort of felt like when you go to somebody's house for dinner and they're putting on a dinner party, like it's a little nicer than their everyday, maybe. It's a little bit more put together. Maybe they tidied the house, but like generally speaking, it's still their dinner party. It's what they wanted to show. It felt like that level of sort of contrived. Like, yes, they put on the outfit to show us how they do this. They know that that's what tourists want to see, but it's still what they care about and what they do and what they're proud of. And I feel like I've just scratched the surface of Mongolia. Like there's so many places I would love to go. If you've never thought about Mongolia, if you've never read much about it, if you don't know anything about it, that's absolutely fine. Mongolia is a country that sits sort of between Russia and China. It's about 3 times the size of France. So in terms of geography, that said, the population is incredibly small. So it's about 3 million people, a little over 3 million people. And 1.5 of those live in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital city. So you can imagine that just like the amount of land that nobody lives in is huge. Mongolians are known for a number of things, mostly kind of the history of Mongolia, so the Mongolian Empire and everything that happened with that. They're also quite known for kind of the nomadic lifestyle that a number of people still live. And now it's, you know, it's in this really interesting transition period because it previously well, it wasn't technically part, but it was very much controlled by the Soviet Union. As a country, it's sort of slowly been rebuilt over the last 30 years. A lot's changed with that. It has a massive mining industry now, so that kind of changes the dynamic of the country. Yeah, it's just in a very unique and interesting place, geopolitically, culturally, historically. Like it has so much going that I found fascinating. So with that, I will take you with me on my little adventure. This is actually a big adventure, really big adventure. I hope you enjoy. See you in Mongolia. Ulaanbaatar. We just arrived at the hotel. It was a very long travel day. We arrived around 7 in the morning, so basically we did like 24 hours of travel, both like struggling to keep our eyes open, but that meant that I actually slept on the flight from Istanbul to Ulaanbaatar and got picked up by a driver and a guide, dropped off at our hotel, which is in the center, right near Genghis Khan Square. There's so many ways to say that name, so I'm going to say Genghis Khan because that's what I grew up learning to say. Yeah, I didn't get as much work done on my project as I thought I would on the flight, but I'm working on my Catalina sweater, so my Lovisa. So I'm on the raglan increases. I have to say, I think if I were to do this again, yeah, I really like the reverse stockinette side with the marling. I think I'll have enough of this yarn actually to do another sweater if I'm just holding it single. I purchased enough to kind of hold it double. I think they both look cool, the stockinette version and the reverse stockinette version. We've got a couple hours before we go and go have lunch, walk around, do some touristy stuff. Otherwise, I guess I'll probably check in back later tonight. I'll try and take some footage of the city. Still a little tired, but we're gonna try and power through.
The parliament building, and the president will hand the medals, and they'll come out through the red carpet, and their family members wait for them here, and then give them flowers, and they have photos together here.
Good morning. We are day 2. Yesterday was a lot. I think we were just very tired coming off the flight, but we also had a really lovely time. Went to a nice little restaurant overlooking one of the temples. Went into the temple, and it's the Buddhist temples that they kept even when the Soviets came and got rid of all the temples and killed a lot of the monks, and it was a whole sad part of the history. Yeah, take any of my history knowledge as like, go read it for yourself. It's so complicated and fascinating, and I do recommend it, but my exact knowledge is limited. Anyway, went and saw that. That was really interesting. The type of Buddhism that is kind of prominent in Mongolia is sort of came up through Tibet, and like from that came up through India. So from a visual perspective, it kind of has that feel to it. And then we went to the National History Museum. That was really interesting. Lots of really cool inspiration for what I might want to make out of this trip. Today's more sightseeing, a couple more museums. I mean, tomorrow we go to the countryside, so today's sort of not our last day in Ulaanbaatar because we'll come back at the end of the trip and do some more kind of exploring on our own. Looking forward to today, trying to stay awake. Jet lag is painful, but so far super interesting and just learning, and we'll see where that goes. Good morning. It is, I guess it's Saturday morning. We are on our way out to the countryside this morning. Spent the last couple days in Ulaanbaatar just pottering around, being like pure tourists, going to all the museums and sightseeing spots. I'll have captured little clips and put them in, but it's obviously not why we're here necessarily. I think being in Ulaanbaatar is really interesting because you do, like, Mongolia's been in a transitionary period for a very long time, but lots of transition in the last 100 years. But it feels very dynamic, and you get to see how people, like, everyday lives in a city in Mongolia. I would say Ulaanbaatar is not the most beautiful city in the world, but it feels very livable, at least in the summer. I think it gets to about -40 in the winter, which makes it much less livable, especially because there's very little public transport. So there's buses, but the traffic is insane. It's much faster to walk most places, but if it's -40, you're not walking around a whole lot. So yeah, it's been really interesting to be here and just observe. I like people watching. I like seeing, lots of people kind of celebrating the square and learning about the history, learning about all of the empires that have come out of Mongolia, the transitions that they've been in over the last really century. It's really fascinating. But we drive out to the countryside, which is really the part that I'm most excited about, is just being out in the steppes with, a family that's nomadic, sleeping in a ger, and we're doing the very luxury version of it. I've never traveled like this. I've never traveled with a guide or a driver, or we're going out to the countryside. I'm very much looking forward to it. Even just driving from the airport, you just got a sense of the expansiveness outside of the city. The city is very, it's a city. I'm looking forward to just meeting some goats, some sheep. They have very specific sheep here because they need to be able to survive the winter. So they have a very large tail, which is basically very fatty. That fatty tail bump area is basically what keeps them alive during the winter, because they store the fat to be able to live. So I don't know, from a fabric perspective, what that made. I think the fact that they experience such cold weather would create an interesting coat.
And we're learning a lot, like I've learned a lot from going to the museums and stuff around how they've used the materials historically. So all of the gers are made of felt. Basically, it's just a felted tent, and that's what keeps it warm and insulated. And then how they created carpets was sort of similar. They basically would take felt and then they put over the felt like silk or more substantial fiber and embroider into that to make that more sturdy. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting like a lot of inspiration from just seeing how they used the materials that they had to create quite beautiful and elaborate pieces for their homes, for their clothing, to like survive the crazy temperatures that hit, and the lifestyle that they, you know, it's not just the freezing cold, it's also like intense wind. And I'll put some photos at some point, whether I've already done that, I don't know, of some like the traditional outfits that they would have had over the years. And they're obviously very different depending on the region that they were in and which time period they were in, based on whose rule they were under, what the fashion was at the time. I'm really enjoying that. I'm enjoying just kind of seeing those little snippets from kind of the way that they've approached fiber arts over the years, for the centuries. The drive out to the countryside is going to be about 5 hours, I think. We're probably going to stop at a supermarket on the way out to get some stuff for the host family. I always like to go to supermarkets in foreign countries. I think it's one of the best ways to explore and see what they have. We went to a market yesterday. It's kind of called the black market by foreigners. It's not actually called the black market by Mongolians, where they've just got everything. I mean, literally everything that you could ever need, ever. From like flooring to sinks to clothes and food and random shaman trinkets and like anything. That was a bit wild. I took some some clips from that, but it's probably one of the few places. It's very safe. It feels very safe in Ulaanbaatar, but that is where pickpockets will be. So we were just being a little extra careful with taking out phones and stuff. I was hoping I'd do more knitting on like the car journey, but I'm kind of thinking I might get car sick if I try to do that once we get out of like proper roads. We'll see. I'm going to take something for it because I don't think I'll handle it particularly well. Otherwise, I will hopefully clip to lots of beautiful countryside, get settled in our ger and meet the family and have a very unique experience for the next few days. Got to the countryside and the ger that we're staying in. It is very luxurious. I don't think I was quite expecting it to be this nice. I'll have done like a little video walkthrough. It has its own little adjacent bathroom, which I don't think is a standard ger practice. But I want to show a couple things in the ger that are sort of fiber related. So there's these ropes all around, which is, our guide I think said mostly yak wool that they use for those. Yeah, they're really strong, but they're also really soft. The carpets, you can tell, are basically felt pads that they've embroidered onto to kind of keep them strong. They also got these little shoes to go around in it's a gift from the tour company. Felted little shoes. And then if you look up at the actual ceiling, you'll see that it's made of the felt. So that's mostly, I think, wool, sheep's wool. Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. We just had lunch. We drove out here. It was a slightly wild ride because at some point there's no more road. It's just like you're basically driving on sand dunes. Feel of the landscape changed like 5 times since we left Ulaanbaatar. And we didn't even come that far, like in the grand scheme of all the things that are in Mongolia. We're going to meet the family. So the camp is kind of on their land, but like not right next to them. So we're gonna go meet them and just see how they live and learn about their lifestyle and maybe do some cooking with them. I will check in probably tomorrow at some point. See how we're getting on. We are about to head out for a little adventure. Last night was very windy, but we had a really lovely afternoon with the family. Had us come over and meet them and see how they live, and made us some food, and we made some dumplings, and it was really lovely. And yeah, today we're gonna go for a hike. I might ride a horse. We'll find out. I haven't been on a horse in a very long time. Come back here, I think we have some chill time. It's like beautiful just to wake up to and see like the expanse of where we are. I'm not going to try and speak outside because it's super windy. They're having a bit of like a sandstorm, so we're trying to kind of navigate around that. But otherwise, yeah, first night in the Gare. It gets cold at night, but it was lovely. It was really lovely to capture some of today. It's just beautiful.
We just got back from a very long hike, and then a horse ride, which was incredible. Like, I don't know what it was about it. My husband got a bunch of footage. It's basically paparazzi because he didn't want to go on a horse. I haven't ridden a horse since I was like maybe 12 or 13. So it's been a while, and I was just very lucky that, I mean, I told them this, obviously. I told them I'm like not an experienced horseman, and give me the kitty horse. Give me the one that like you put the babies on. And they did. And he was a very sweet horse, and he just trotted along and happy as could be. My legs are definitely going to feel it later. I haven't used those muscles in a while. Oh, I got stung by some stingy nettle, but that's all part of the adventure. And now I'm just going to get tidied up and have lunch, and I think we're just relaxing the rest of the day. Might go visit a different family tonight. They gave us a little gift. It's on the bed. I'm going to show it to you. This little guy. Look how cute this is. It's just like a little felt horse, locally made. Just a relaxing afternoon. Hopefully I'll get some knitting done. Yeah, I'm noticing that I think I know why, but like they don't have a lot of like knitwear in their traditional outfits. They do a lot more like felted wool and woven fabrics, and it's very windy out here, which would make sense because I think you would go through knitted garments pretty easily, and the woven, like they're quite densely woven fabrics, and felting is obviously much more secure, so sturdy for not letting wind in. And yeah, the wind is intense out there. So far today's been pretty amazing. Just keep soaking it all in. But yeah, I'll check back in when I remember to, / I'm not out in the wind, because you definitely can't hear a word I'm saying out there. I'll speak to you later. It is our last morning in the countryside and just taking in the scenery again. It's just so pretty. The sun is very bright. We've had an amazing time here. It's been wonderful. We're driving back into the city today and then we're gonna go to flying to the mountains tomorrow. I just wanted to say goodbye to this place. It's so beautiful and peaceful out here. We had an amazing little bonfire last night, just sitting out here and looking at the scenery, wrapped in wool blankets. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next part, but I'm also going to miss this place, and I'll keep you in the loop on what we're doing. Okay, we just got back into Ulaanbaatar. It's about a 5-hour drive, so that was intense. And then we stopped at a cashmere factory, which was actually really interesting. So it's a small brand. It's called Bodios. I'll show at some point. I'll show everything I've bought in Mongolia. We bought some good gifts from there. But they do a lot of cashmere, but they actually are kind of champion and push more into the mainstream yak wool, which was something I was really interested in and understanding more about. And they have a special process for how they process it so that it's fluffier and feels softer somehow. I don't know if that's true, but it was great. We met the CEO and he took us on a little tour of it's quite a small factory. We then went to another factory just to see comparable, and that was industrial scale. But this was very much beautifully presented, clean. He took us through the whole process from knitting it up to the seaming to the putting the final details and the steaming and all this stuff. So really interesting. I did ask about do you mill the stuff here? Or do you spin it here? And he said yes. That's one of the big things that they've been trying to do with the brand. It's been in business pretty much since Mongolia opened in the early 90s. He was talking about how the founders really championed keeping the production in Mongolia. So they're very keen to make sure that it doesn't, as raw material, kind of just end up in China and Italy. And because at each of those stages, obviously, money is lost, money is exchanged. So the more money that can stay in Mongolia, the more that it can support Mongolians and the economy here. So he says he outsources the cleaning of sorry, I'm gonna sit down, it's a long day. He outsources the cleaning of the coats, and then the combed, God, my brain is so not here, of the materials. He outsources cleaning, and then he brings it back in house, and they do the milling and the turning to yarn, and then they knit it into garments. And he says he does do some white label stuff for other brands, but he's trying to incentivize other people to stock the brand so that it gives recognition to Mongolia. And they had a lot of really beautiful yak stuff. So we didn't actually buy any cashmere. Some of the stuff we bought has cashmere in it, as a blend, but it's almost entirely yak stuff. So we bought some socks, which if you ask Mongolians, what do you use yak for? They say socks, because it's drying and sweat wicking and odor resistant and all the things that we love about wool. And then we also got some blankets for gifts and some blankets for ourselves. And then we both got we basically got matching hoodies. Unintentionally, we got matching hoodies. I'm very particular, as you can imagine, about the knits that I buy versus the knits that I knit. There was a beautiful cable cashmere sweater that was the equivalent of about 100 pounds. And I was oh, I could go for that. But then I thought, actually, I'd love to knit this. And I have cream cashmere yarn that I can recycle from other garments, and I don't need to buy this. So, but the hoodie is very densely knit. So very fine gauge, dense knit.
and it's this very like sporty hoodie, and I thought it would be perfect for like a winter layer. Probably not something I particularly wanted to knit myself. Yeah, that was really interesting. It was just, I used a long time ago, I worked in fashion, but I only did, it was my first job, and it was not at all knitwear. It's interesting, like, you know, kind of the steps it needs to go through, but it's nice to see it being done well. And I have learned, like, since that a few of the kind of big Mongolian cashmere brands do their own production in Mongolia, which is great. One of them the other one we went to go visit, the other factory was like the oldest one, and it's from the Soviet era. So it was the cashmere factory that they used in Soviet. And the materials, like, it was much more mass market. So the products were not as good quality and not as beautifully constructed, and the cashmere didn't feel as good, and like, but it was like, it was fine. It was just, there was nothing there for us, so we didn't buy anything. That's it. We're gonna we get up at 3 again tomorrow morning. So getting up at 3, leave the hotel at 4, get to the airport. I think our flight's 6:45 to Oji. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's the airport in the region, and then we drive up into the mountains to go stay with a different family and learn about their customs and traditions. The CEO for the cashmere factory was super confused as to why I was there. They did actually have knitting yarn. He didn't seem to think they did. He was like, sometimes we sell like cones of yarn for knitting. Then on the shop, like in the factory shop, there were a number of skeins of yak wool. It wasn't like the best price, and I couldn't tell what gauge it was, and I couldn't tell what weight. Yeah, I wasn't that excited about it, basically. But I am hopefully going to be able to get my hands on some yak wool while I'm here, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. Driving and shopping takes it out of you. Yeah, I think we're just basically going to be chilling in the hotel. It's like 4 o'clock and I'm ready to pass out. I don't even mind if I do. Take a shower, organize for tomorrow, and then head out to the mountains. Should be really exciting. I will check in with you probably when I get to the mountains. I highly doubt I'm going to be chattable at 4 a.m., but who knows? Anything's possible.
want to turn around, you can see the ridiculous view. Yeah. We are in the Altai Mountains. We're staying here for 3 days near the Kazakhstan border, so we're staying with, most of the people here are Kazakh. They are known for, well, some of them are known for their hunting with eagles, so they train eagles to hunt with them. And we got a chance to meet one of them. We're staying right next to a man that does this, and he's in his 70s, and he's like super lovely. We said hello to his family, and then he sort of showed us some of his training he's doing. He has a new eagle, so the eagle's only about a year old, and they only keep them for like 4 or 5 years, and then they set them free and they go on to be wild eagles. So yeah, we are very well taken care of here as well. Like I thought it was going to be much rougher than it is. It's actually incredibly luxurious again. And the family that we're staying next to is absolutely lovely. I think I said at one point when I met them, I was like, I wish my grandparents lived in a place like this. And they were like, it's okay, we'll adopt you. So the difference in terms of like aesthetic and particularly when it comes to fiber arts is very intense. They do a lot of incredible embroidery, a lot of felting. They decorate everything, like every part of the gear. I'll have had some footage is like super decorated, which is not the case in sort of the Heartland area that we were at. They had some rugs and some decorations, but for the most part it was like very subtle motifs, whereas this is like very ornate and detailed, and yeah, just a very different thing. I hope the wind isn't getting too bad, but we're going to be getting ready for dinner soon, and yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. I'll try and like show more detail. The some of the wall hangings that they've got in the rooms in the gares, like they've been made by the family members of the people who are helping us, which is amazing. So yeah, I will check in at some point, but in the meantime, just spin you around so you can see the pretty view instead of my face. Yeah, pretty amazing. Ooh, I saw my first yak today, which I was so excited about. They have more yaks up here because it is colder. A group of yak that we kind of drove past, and it was very exciting. They're very pretty. They're like cows with long hair, and yeah, super cute. Anyway, the family here has also a big herd of goats and sheep and all that. So yeah, I'll just keep you up to date. I don't even know 100% what we're doing, so I think the wind is probably just gonna be too much at this point. So I'll stop filming.
Ирүүлээрээ гэхдээ би өөрөө аймгийн мэрэг хуваараа багаараа болохгүй амар 3 жил дараа нь төрүүлсэн. Элэг гэдэг юм. Эвэр, янгрын эвэр. Янгрын эвэр.
Morning. It is Friday morning, I think. It's our last full day in the mountains, and then we're gonna head back to Ulaanbaatar tomorrow, and we've got a couple days there. So I'm just coming outside, sort of enjoying the scenery. It's pretty spectacular. We had I didn't even check in yesterday. We had a very full day. We went first to visit another family, so that was a family that has a number of herds, but the only ones that were at the camp were the baby goats. So I got to cuddle a baby goat. That was super fun. And then we went to this on this little hike up to a waterfall, and then in front of these fairly famous mountain. I think it's the second largest in Mongolia. Lots of snow leopards up there, or there aren't very many snow leopards, so most of them live around here. So there's a couple up in the mountains, sort of behind me, up there. Yeah, we went on a little hike, and then we had lunch in front of this mountain, this glacier, which was pretty spectacular. Then came back. Then this champion archer came and gave us a lesson in Mongolian archery, which is sort of a unique style. I think it's one of the first styles of archery, and he was explaining there's a number of different styles of Mongolian archery, and he was sort of a specialist in the first kind. And he actually creates the bows and arrows. So the bows are a really unique way of doing it, where he spends, I think it takes about a year to make one. I was terrible at archery. My husband was pretty good. And then all the eagle hunter who kind of has his camp right near us came over and wanted to try, and then his grandson wanted to try, and then the guys that work in the camp wanted to try, and it was really fun. We had a great time. But it's amazing to see, he was very proud of his craft. He's very proud of the tradition of sort of competitions amongst the different families. So the different nomadic families come together for competitions, usually around the Naadam festival, which is in July, and they do archery and wrestling and horse racing and all kinds of stuff. So today we are going to see some more goats and yak, maybe, and I think we're going to comb the goats and learn how they comb the cashmere out of the goats. And then we are going to go help family move. So not the family that we're staying next to, but another family that is moving from their winter camp to their summer camp, and we're going to help them pack up and do the migration, which is a really special experience that a lot of people don't get to do. So feel very honored. This should go without saying, but I obviously check before I film stuff, and if they're comfortable with that. They all seem to be very comfortable with it. I think I had a moment where I was could this turn into a little bit of performative tourism stuff? And it is to a degree, but it's also how they live and things they're proud of, things that they've learned and had for generations. And so yes, they're performing, yes, they're showing off their skills and what's unique, but they know that that's what tourists want to see. They want to see the eagle hunter training his eagle in his outfit, and the archery guy, but it's still something they do, especially during kind of festivals and gatherings. So it's been really, it's been special. It hasn't felt forced. And even yesterday, I think we were supposed to comb the goats yesterday, but because
there was apparently a wolf in the mountains that was threatening some of the yaks that the family has, that they had been moving stuff around and weren't able to do it then. Wolves are definitely the primary predator out here. Although our guide in Ulaanbaatar had said that, after horses, wolves are definitely the most respected animal, and there's definitely an appreciation for the balance they bring to nature. And it's all everybody here is very connected to nature and how it works and the seasons and how all the animals interact together. And right, I'm gonna go and have a little bit of breakfast, and then we're gonna head off and have a full day. And I'll check in when I can. Good morning. It is our final morning in the Altai Mountains. We're about to head to the airport. We're just checking in because it's 5 a.m. and the sky is pink and it's beautiful and so quiet and so calm. Yeah, yesterday was amazing. Yesterday was a very long day. We did started the morning pretty early and went and combed a cashmere goat. It was a pretty fascinating experience. I'll explain in more detail what happens when I have a bit more time to kind of chat. I think it probably looks a bit brutal to some people, but actually it's how it's done, and you should know how it's done if you're gonna, appreciate cashmere. But we then went and met with a family who was migrating from their winter camp to their summer camp. We helped them pack up. I mean, how helpful we were, I think, was probably debatable. We were there, we participated, and we helped them pack up their gear and then herd their animals across to like a plain area, kind of moving the animals from, I mean, that takes quite a long time. We only did like a small section of it, which was lovely. We just walked behind the animals and tried to get them to keep moving. Goats and sheep can be a little stubborn. Yaks can be very stubborn, apparently. A beautiful like lunch in the valley, and then one of the cars got stuck, so we had a little adventure with that, and then we came up and we built a gear with the family. So we got to see all the pieces of it kind of coming together, which was really interesting. So basically a giant puzzle. Came back over to our camp, had dinner, and then some people came and shared some like Kazakh and Mongolian traditional singing and songs, which the whole crew knew, and they were like singing along with it, which was really, it was very special. And then they did kind of a closing ceremony where the team that's been taking care of us here like did a number of songs that they had prepared, and they're all like great singers. So it was lovely, and did their thanks and their appreciation. We did that. It was all very like, I don't know, they're very, very kind and welcoming here. At least that's been my experience. In every house every home that or gear that we've stopped in, you just get this incredible sense of like, they want to give you food. Everybody wants to give you food and milk tea, which I like the milk tea, so that's good. And the food is good too. It's like curd cheeses but if I was going to my friend's house to help them pack for moving, I don't think I'd be expecting them to have made me like tea and cheese and everything. Very grateful for this experience, and I have not had any time to do knitting while I've been here. It's just been nonstop. So yesterday was a very long day, but really worth it. And then we've got a few days in Ulaanbaatar, which will be a little bit more chill, I think. 2 of them we're just by ourselves, so we should be fine. But yeah, chill a couple of days before we head back to London. Right, I will probably try and do a bit more of a debrief when I get to Ulaanbaatar and have a bit more space. Right now I need to have some tea, and then we need to get going. Good morning. We are back in Ulaanbaatar. We got in yesterday morning and we went for lunch, and then we went to a museum. I'm going to forget the name of the guy, but I'll put it on screen. It's named after him. It's not the only thing that was in the museum, but it was sort of historical Mongolian artwork. The museums here are a little funny with photos, so some of them allow it, some of them it's an extra ticket type, and some of it like it just wasn't allowed. So in this museum there was no photos allowed. We did that, and then we went to a show that was very touristy, and I think it's something that runs basically every night here as like a demonstration of particular types of performance arts from Mongolia. So like 100% targeted to tourists, but it was still really interesting. Like I'd never actually seen someone doing the throat singing or playing certain instruments that they play, or the contortionists were insane. It's also something I didn't know, but like most kind of contortionists around like in Cirque du Soleil and everything else are actually Mongolian. I don't know why that is. I'm sure there are reasons. Saw that and then went back to our hotel room, and we were just exhausted. we had such an amazing time, but we haven't had like much downtime. Especially when we were up in the mountains, it was just kind of nonstop. So we just kind of came back and wanted a really chill night, and we wanted to like just have a really relaxing morning this morning. So we just kind of stayed in the room. I finally got some knitting time in, which was amazing. Making progress. We're getting there. I've got I'm under the arms. I actually did like a section of the underarms in a different way because if you've come across my knitting podcast before, you know I get kind of bored when I'm just doing stockinette in the round, so I try to do something slightly interesting down the side. The pattern actually has this detail of the raglan. Well, it's like a contiguous shoulder construction. So, but then that kind of goes down and has basically a twisted rib detail. And I've kept that in the pattern. It stops when you connect under the arms, but I've actually just kept it going down the side because I like the way that looked. And I had done some other kind of like broken rib under the arm, and then it just looked messy. So I ended up like laddering back. I hadn't done very much, but now I'm good. I added a couple extra stitches under the arm. I can't remember why I did that, but now I've decreased them, so I just have a little bit of shaping. Maybe that was my initial intent. I don't remember. We've got we got today, the rest of today, and then tomorrow here, and then we fly back to London on Tuesday. Still really enjoying it. Today we're actually going to an event. Well, we're going to a meetup basically. So my husband actually started a meetup, and he started that like 17 years ago in London, and then it's all over the world. So there's like different meetup. They're just free meetups in different cities around the world, and they're volunteer organized and run. And when we decided to come here, we were like, we should reach out to them and see if there's a meetup in Ulaanbaatar. And there was, so we reached out, and he's gonna do a little talk, and then meet the local organizers afterwards and just hear about the challenges they're having, or the kind of their perspective on building businesses here. And then I think we'll probably have another chill night. Tomorrow I think we're just going to do some shopping, and then I am going to meet up with a guy named John Hetz, who is one of the founders of, I've already forgotten the name of it. It's a yarn brand that I think it's based out of Mongolia / the US. So I'm meeting with him, and I might try to buy some yarn off him. Other than that, we're just gonna be doing some like last minute gift shopping and things like that. Wandering around the city, again, trying to take it easy. Yeah, I really love it here. I don't know how to describe it. I've always felt the draw to come here. You never know what it's gonna be like when you get here, and I just feel very calm here. Like I just feel very at ease. It feels safe. It feels exciting. It feels like there's interesting things happening. It's obviously culturally really interesting. Everyone is very welcoming, but very like genuine, at least that we've met. Obviously that's a massive generalization statement for a country I've been in for like 10 days. But I don't feel any like urge to get home. I mean, I miss my dog, basically, is why I want to get home. But anyway, I've got to get a little bit dressed. We've been so like in the mountains campy vibe that I haven't put on like real clothes in a little while. So I'm gonna try and look a little bit presentable and maybe put some makeup on. Crazy thoughts. I think I'll probably do like a recap when we get back, when I've had like a minute to process, because right now I'm just here, I'm just enjoying. Want to keep it that way, and then I'm sure when I get back to London I'll have lots of reflections and thoughts on all the experiences that we had. I'll speak to you soon.
So I just bought a whole lot of yarn, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm very excited, and I will show you when I get back to, probably when I get back to London and I've managed to actually fit it in my suitcase and then have some clever thoughts about it. But I just came from meeting John from Ula+Lia, and he was lovely and super helpful, gave me a bunch of interesting thoughts on sort of the different yarn types that they have in Mongolia and their characteristics and some of the challenges of sort of sourcing yarn here. And yeah, super interesting, lovely person. And we're heading back to the hotel room, probably get some food, and then packing everything up to head back to London.
And we're back. I wanted to finish off this video. I know it's probably incredibly long at this point, but I just wanted to end with some thoughts, some kind of overarching reflections on the trip. Show just a little bit of what I got, both from like a souvenir perspective as well as yarn perspective, and then some design ideas I have coming out of that. I think the first thing that like struck me as I was editing the vlog, and also as I've been thinking about it since, is something that you see a lot with people who do knitting podcasts, how having this like lens of fiber arts and creativity and like creating craftsmanship, what a wonderful lens that is to apply to pretty much anywhere you go. Like the fact that, you know, you could go to some random place and find which wool they have available there and which fibers they have available there, and then like learn about, you know, the history of that within that culture. It's something that exists pretty much everywhere in the world, is a history of fiber arts and a current practice of fiber arts, and a like manifestation of that in everyday garments and homeware. And I feel sometimes like, you know, knitting a sweater and creating garments is kind of a frivolous hobby. I don't really think of it that way. I think of it as like meditation and calming and creative and just self-expression. It can be easy to sort of push it down as something that's not that important, but actually it's something that's huge connector amongst humans all over the world, and Mongolia was definitely no exception to this. But having that as like a lens to look at this trip through, even though I planned this trip and I wanted to go on this trip long before I got back into knitting, I don't know if I would have noticed those little details if I hadn't had this hobby and this craft that I love. I don't know if I would have like noticed the stitch details in the tapestries and the way that they use felt and the way that they do all this stuff. So I'm super grateful for my little hobby and my opportunity to look at the world with that lens. So that was one little reflection. Another one, which is probably more specific, I know I didn't talk about it too much in the video, was the combing of the cashmere goats, which I really enjoyed. I will say that like I had watched videos of people doing cashmere goat combing prior to going, and this was not, those two experiences were very different. I feel like there's some videos on YouTube and places which is kind of like the Disney princess version of combing a cashmere goat, where you've got the goat and you're just like gently combing the hairs out of the goat, and the goat's just sitting there and it's all calm. And I grew up in a relatively, I didn't have a farm, I didn't live on a farm or any of that stuff, but I was around a lot of agriculture and livestock and countryside growing up. So it wasn't jarring to me it wouldn't be jarring to me to see a sheep getting sheared or a goat being combed, but it looked kind of brutal. I think possibly looked brutal on the video. I don't know. I mean, we definitely took our time. I think he was saying that one goat should take about 10 minutes for a kind of experienced goat comber, and it took like 3 of us about 30 minutes. So not the same thing. So I think I was kind of expecting more of like the idea that like when you're combing the goat, you're like combing out these hairs, the undercoat, and you're leaving the guard hairs.
I don't know, in my head I had this visual that's basically similar to me combing my dog. Like, you're just combing and the hairs are coming out and it's all very soft and lovely. But this was much closer to shearing a sheep in that you're taking, I mean, there's like a whole other goat underneath that coat, and you're just like, you're combing back this quite thick coat. And I'm sure it's done differently in different places and different practices, but this was probably quite an authentic experience. I mean, this was not for show. This was a guy who had a herd of goats that he needed to comb, and he had his setup of how he did that, and it's his livelihood, and it was just really interesting. But I thought I'd kind of point that out as like I think you should, you know, generally know where your food and your fiber and everything comes from, and the good and bad of that. And like, I hope it didn't make people uncomfortable to see that. I found it really interesting, and the coat does come off naturally. When you're walking around the hills in Mongolia, like, you do see clumps of fur on stuff, the clumps of cashmere in bushes from where the goats have kind of like rubbed up against rocks or bushes or whatever to start kind of getting rid of their undercoat. But this felt much more like an overcoat than an undercoat. This was very much like you're really just pulling off a pretty thick amount of wool, of cashmere wool. So yeah, that was just different to what I expected. It wasn't like good or bad, it was just different, and I enjoyed the experience. I'm happy I got to have the experience, but I just wanted to kind of like reflect on that. I would say like the third thing that I've been reflecting a lot about before going, I guess I hadn't really thought about like why people are nomadic in Mongolia. Like, why does that exist there, not elsewhere? You know, yes, you have traditions and cultures and behaviors that you have from those cultures that get passed down. But I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of that everybody else moved on to agriculture and this particular group of people didn't. And they still live this lifestyle, which even though they see and they have access to the internet and different ways of farming and different information about taking care of their herds. I mean, the guy in the Heartland, he had trackers for his horses, so he knew where his horses were. This was relatively new, but he could see where they were so that he could go and like find them and round them up when he needed to. You know, he was like looking at the weather app and he's trying to figure out, you know, it was very dusty when we were there when we first got there, and then it rained a couple times, and that obviously suppresses the dust quite a lot, which is great. So yeah, little things like that, which I guess it just hadn't crossed my mind as to why they lived like that. And being there, it became very clear that this was how you live in that land. So when I think of like taking care of nature, or engaging with nature, or, you know, living with the seasons and all of that stuff, this is just at like a slightly different level, because a lot of like modern gardening and farming and everything that you do is still manipulating land. You're still digging things up and working with the seasons, working with the land, but you are manipulating your surroundings. And this is like the opposite. You're living off the animals. The land is feeding the animals. That's it. Like you do not live off the land. Mongolians don't grow, at least the nomadic families don't grow a lot of like food for them to eat. And there's a reason for that, and that is, which I hadn't actually considered, which was like the soil and the climate and the intensity of the winters coupled with the intensity of the summers means that very little actually grows. If you try and plant stuff, which we saw a little bit of agriculture as we were driving out from Ulaanbaatar, you see that like between the wind and the dryness, it basically becomes sandstorms, and desert creation is a real concern for that part of the world, because if you start creating lots of deserts, then you don't have any food for the animals, and then you don't have an ecosystem to work within. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that before. I don't know why I hadn't like considered that actually they don't farm because they can't. The soil and the way that the land is and the way that the climate is and the way that the winters kind of manage to basically kill everything, it's just not an option. So how they live their life in terms of their summer camp versus their winter camp, I again thought that had more to do with like in the winter you want to be somewhere maybe more secure and versus the summer, or maybe even close to other people. This is the opposite is true. So in the winter their camps tend to be closer to the mountains, so that is to kind of create a bit of shelter. The reason they are nomadic is so that the animals have grazing space for them to continue to eat. So they don't provide food for their animals. I think they do at the end of the summer kind of take
a cutting of grass and use that in the winter if they need it. But for the most part, the horses are out in the snow, like digging up dead grass to eat throughout the winter. And then they, throughout the summer, eat lots of, because the grass has become much more abundant. And so from the winter to the summer they actually live much more closely together. I would have thought at like -40, you'd kind of want to be close to your neighbors in the winter because what if you need something? That doesn't work with the way that they need to manage their herds. So yeah, I thought that was just really interesting. So they can afford to gather in the summer because that's when there is plenty of food for the animals. And when you think about like how many animals they have to feed, it's got the family that we were with, I think he had 100 horses, over 100 horses, and like 1,000 sheep and goats, and then some camels. I guess that's a lot of grass that you need to do, and they just graze all day. So they need to spread that out and make sure that they aren't overgrazing so that there is grass next year. And yeah, it was just a really interesting way to look at the world and to look at engaging with nature, which I hadn't really thought about before. It makes perfect sense. It just hadn't entered my head. I had loads of other collections, but honestly, like, it was just such a beautiful trip. It was such an incredible experience. I'm so grateful for the experience, and I hope you enjoyed some of that footage. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I got and also what I'm going to do with it. I have already talked about this a little bit in my most recent podcast episode. So all of the yarn that I got was from Ula+Lia. I think I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, which is a Ulaanbaatar based yarn brand run by a lovely guy named John. There's a Kickstarter campaign where he does every year, and then he sells yarn on his website as well. So if you miss the Kickstarter campaign, I think this is going to end up going up like days before it ends. So if you don't see it in time, he does sell stuff on his website, and it is well priced. Like, it is good quality, well priced yarn that is really sustainably sourced and is a wonderful small business to support. He gave me a little bit of the sheep's wool, which I'm really excited to play with. This is just 100% Mongolian sheep's wool. It has been processed. I believe he said it's removed the guard hairs, but it's not super washed. So it's actually really lovely and soft. Yeah, I just want to play with this a little bit. He does sell this. I think he has previously sold a blend with cashmere, but cashmere prices, he was saying, have gone up quite significantly this year, more than normal. And he's doing more of a promotion for the actual wool, just 100% wool. And I would say this is really nice wool. I think this would make a beautiful, like, just looking at the fiber, I think this would make a really beautiful cable jumper or something like that. Like, it'd be stunning. He also does a lot of fun like dye projects, and he makes a lot of his own ready-to-wear pieces out of this. Then I got, I think this is about 400 grams of fingering weight camel. So this is 100% camel. This is super soft. Like, I don't know what I was expecting with camel. Camels kind of freak me out. They asked at one point if we wanted to ride a camel. And I was like, no. They look angry and mean, but their wool is beautiful and stunningly soft. He did say it has similar properties to sort of alpaca in that it doesn't hold its shape and structure particularly well, but it has a wonderful drape. I've been playing with some ideas for that. There's two things here. There's what I want to do with this yarn, and then there's like design inspiration from the trip. And those are two kind of different things. So what I want to do with this yarn is not really design inspiration from the trip, this one in particular, just because I'm very much basing this on the yarn itself. At the moment, I'm looking at doing something that's just a simple, super lightweight, fingering weight sweater, probably some kind of a mock neck. I think I just want to keep this one really simple and let the yarn shine, let it be lightweight so that it maintains structure as much as possible, and just let that color shine because it's so beautiful. I wasn't planning on buying camel yarn. I went to his studio and he showed me around all the different yarns that he had, and I saw this and I was just like, I couldn't leave it, so I brought it home. The other two cones that I got are both yak wool. So this is the light colored yak wool undyed. It's so beautiful. I love this color as well. I have a couple of ideas for this, but I think, yeah, they're both very much Mongolia inspired. I might do one that's just without color work, but I have two kind of color work concepts in my head that are very much Mongolia inspired, which is One is a eagle motif colorwork sweater where I'd use this, and then I might use, I got some of the dark yak wool. So this is undyed as well, but from a dark yak, and this is from a light yak. The idea would be that it sort of has eagle motif around, which obviously relates to the eagle hunters and our time with them. I'm not sure if I'm that drawn to that idea, to be totally honest. The other is something that kind of reminds me more of the petroglyphs, which are those like markings in the rocks, which we did see a number of those, particularly our time in the West in Mongolia. There's a sweater, I think it's called the Twigs. I'll put it on screen, but it like instantly popped into my head because it just kind of reminds me of that. And I like the idea of something that would reference that style of illustration. If you have other ideas of like designs that kind of do that reference to that style of illustration, I'd be super interested in hearing them. I think this is so beautiful. And I've got 800 grams of this. It's fingering weight. I could get at least 2 sweaters out of this if I knit them both at fingering. I don't actually know. I do need to do some math on this and actually find out how much yardage I have. But I'm really excited to work with this. I don't know which of these I'm going to work with this fall. I probably won't work with all of them this fall because I have so many ideas that I want to get through. I want to work with one of them, and this feels really soft. Somebody did ask if I thought the yak was softer than wool or as soft as like a soft merino, so like not a woolly wool. And I would say that this feels kind of super soft, but it doesn't feel like cashmere soft. It feels like wool soft, so probably more of like a merino. But I think it's so hard to know how it's going to react with your skin when you're actually wearing it. It is beautiful. And it's just, it's got so much variation to it in the colors that I just, yeah. Can't help think of those stubborn little yaks. They're not very little, they're huge. And then the last one that I got is this, which is also yak and it's dyed. So this is the kind of mid color naturally that he then dyes with, I think this is called burnt sienna. This, I think I probably have enough for a vest. My idea for this, the inspiration for this is definitely from, it was one of the first things, like when we were in Ulaanbaatar for the first couple of days, we went to a few museums and one of them had these costumes, like traditional costumes. And there was this one jacket that I was like, if I could buy that jacket, I would buy it. But all of them kind of had similar shaping in terms of like contrast edging. So there was quite like a distinct edge to all of it, and what I'm imagining is something that sort of has that. I don't necessarily want to do the full crossover. That's almost too much of a reference for me. I think I want to keep it inspired by, not necessarily trying to recreate a traditional dress. I like the idea of this, like this is the base color and then having edging along the armhole area, the neck, and then down the front and and across the sides, which is quite like a dramatic contrast. I need to play with it a little bit, find some patterns that might work for something like this. This is also fingering weight. It could be that I end up doing something that is maybe not with this one. I don't know exactly if I'd have enough yardage for it. Has the sleeves, but still maintains this like distinction here at the arm. I'm thinking, yeah, it's something that could like be a bit of a gilet jacket, whether that's with sleeves or without sleeves, but like something uses the edges as kind of like dramatic contrast or a decorative contrast. The other design idea that I had while I was there, which doesn't relate to any of the yarn that I bought, it kind of like brought me back to the landscape sweater that I'm working on. So if you haven't seen this, it's the Homestead sweater by Megan Faith Make. I've made a lot of changes to it. And one of those changes that I really enjoyed is working with gradient to kind of do the sky and the clouds. There's a designer that recently published a pattern. I know it's super popular. It's on like the Hot Right Now Ravelry page all the time. Maybe it's Baltic something. I'll put it on the screen. But basically it's like clouds and sea and it's incredibly beautiful. And I was kind of thinking like between what I'm working on with the Homestead and something along those lines, like just some kind of like a cloud sweater
because the sky there was so incredible and it changed so dramatically all the time. It's such an iconic thing for Mongolia is the blue sky. I thought it could be really cool to do some kind of a, whether that's color work, whether it's stranded color work, or more of a intarsia project that kind of just does sort of a gradient with clouds. That's the overarching concept. I haven't laid it out properly, but I think it could be so beautiful. I could imagine having a piece like that. So actually this is like, I'm kind of surprised that what I got in Mongolia is so like neutral, and I guess I'm not surprised. Like I appreciate the fibers and where they came from, and the people who have spent their lives raising the animals that produce this fiber, and that's what that trip was about in a lot of ways. So I'm happy that I get to take this little piece of it home with me. I did get some other kind of gifts and stuff. There was a lot of felted, basically little like ornaments that I got. Some of them for the tree, some of them are gifts. They were made by, there's a few kind of organizations that support crafts and teaching women crafts. I got a few of these cards. So this was, if you've watched the video, then you'll have seen it. They gave me one of these at the place that we stayed at. And it's basically just like a felted little card, so like a little felted gare on the card, which I thought was just beautiful. We'll give some of those to family. I've already gifted a number of blankets and socks, so if you ask Mongolians like what do you do with yak wool, they say socks because it's super warm and sweat wicking and breathable and all the rest of it. And so I got some socks for my mom and my brother and stepdad and people like that. And then I also got them blankets. So I got them some yak and cashmere blankets. And then I got us just a 100% yak blanket. Natural, the different colors that you can get from the yaks. It's interesting, like the yak wool that I have is even more almost gray, which I like this more silvery tone. I got some they're big on sea buckthorn. Traditionally, it would have been their source of vitamin C, which grows in berries in kind of hostile environments. And they make a tea with it, so I had a lot of that. And I brought, they sell little packets of it, and so I brought some of that back. But I've actually found that they sell it in the UK because they grow it in like Scotland. I think it's 10 times vitamin C that you would get from orange juice, and I thought it tasted good. My husband did not think it. He didn't think it tasted bad, but he thought it tasted a little funky. I did not taste that. I just thought it tasted good. I think that's it. I feel like I've been here for long enough. I feel like I've given you guys enough Mongolia information and inspiration. I hope it was interesting and at least kept you entertained for a bit while you've worked on stuff. I hope you've been creating something beautiful, or at least something you've enjoyed. I will be back with another podcast episode soon. Until then, I hope you're having a wonderful summer, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.